Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. We're just going to give it a minute for everyone to join, and then we'll get things started. All right, we'll go ahead and get things started here. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today to learn about how subcontractors can take advantage of our project management module. My name is Dylan Reed, and I'm a construction success manager here at Fieldwire. And before we begin, I just want to address a few housekeeping items. So to ensure a smooth session, all attendees will be muted, but please don't hesitate to ask any questions, and then put any questions that you do have, please put them in the Q&A panel. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can, but for any questions that we don't get to, we'll have one of our experts reach out to you directly. We also have a couple poll questions throughout the webinar for you to participate in, so please feel free to select an answer when those questions pop up. And then we'll also have a short 5-question survey at the end of the webinar, which really helps us know if we're doing things well and helps us deliver content and plan for the future. So before we dive into this webinar, please take a moment to fill out the next 2 poll questions so we can just learn a little bit more about you. Awesome, thanks everyone for answering that. And then we're gonna launch one more before we get things kicked off here. Perfect. Thanks everyone for answering those. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome your speaker for today, one of our construction solutions engineers, John Shamandi Cook. Take it away, John.
Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it. Well, thank you everybody for joining. This is going to be our project management for subcontractors webinar. Let's jump right into it. We got a lot to cover today. So quick, just short agenda for today. I'm going to run through a quick introduction of myself. Then we're going to look at a Fieldwire product overview of like the entire product. And we're going to kind of focus in on project management overview. And then really the bulk of today's webinar will be this live demo. And then we'll cap it off with a Q&A session. So quick introduction of myself. Nice to meet y'all. Again, I'm John Shamandi Cook, a construction solutions engineer here at Fieldwire. Give you a little history on my background, like my experience in the industry. I graduated from Lehigh University with an industrial systems engineering degree. Then I went to go work at Kiewit, a large GC in North America. And I really did a huge gambit of kind of the managerial roles at Kiewit. I started as a field engineer, went to senior field engineer, did a little bit of estimating, did a short stint of that. And then really I kind of finished my tenure at Kiewit as as a superintendent on a large infrastructure project in the Northeast. So with that field experience and then my proficiency with the Fieldwire product, it really puts myself and actually the entire construction team, if you ever get the chance to work with one of us, to help you, one, train your teams, develop workflows, demo the product, and really show you the value that we can provide y'all at the end of the day. So before we jump into PM again, let's kind of talk about the foundations of what our PM module is built off of. And that's our project management module is built off of. And that's our field management module. And whether and just as a heads up, today we're not actually going to jump into this module wholeheartedly. So if you're ever interested, we have plenty of webinars on our YouTube page that you can watch that have tons of topics that relate to this, as well as just, hey, request a demo. We'd love to show you the product. With that said, whether it's field management or project management, or really anything that Fieldwire develops, we kind of do it with 4 key items in mind. One, we want to make sure the product is very easy for you to use, whether you're a field personnel or in the office. 2, we want to ensure that we're reducing or actually eliminating double entry between the field and office. 3, we want to ensure that, hey, we're kind of combining a lot of other products that you may be using. So, hey, you may be using Excel, email, a PDF editor, Bluebeam, all these different products. We want to kind of consolidate those all into one. And then lastly, we want to eliminate data silos on your project. So really, essentially, we want to make sure that you have that one central source of truth for any type of data you may be looking at. So with that said, let's talk about just the 3 pillars of field management that our project management module kind of connects to. One, we have access and share information, right? So we have plans and markups, files, product data, whatever you may be need, your men and women in the field can access that information. Next, you got plan and manage work, right? So using that task module, a really robust module for communication and also tracking, hey, whether it be punch listing, equipment that you're installing, anything you need to track, great module for that. And then lastly, track and report that progress using forms, reports, photos, and videos, all working in tandem. So with that said, let's kind of look at what Fieldwire's vision has been for the last 2 to 3 years. And again, hey, we've talked about this field management, our bread and butter from back in the day. And now we've realized that to become this all-in-one solution, we've been pushing the development of our project management modules. And the ones that we're going to focus on today are RFI, submittal, and change order flows, as well as specifications. So now let's start looking at these project management modules as a whole. So let's just talk about RFIs kind of at a high level, right? One, we want to provide our clients with a system of records. So whether it's between the field and the office, you have collaborative workflows that you can work on these RFIs and then access that information. Next, we want to be able to, again, integrate that information back to the field. So you're not just saving these on your desktop or saving these within the Fieldwire module. You're able to then connect it back to your plans and your tasks so that your men and women in the field, again, can actually access that information quickly and effectively. And then lastly, automated tracking. So whether you're doing tracking internally with your team to collaborate or you're trying to track externally, you have that live tracking capability within Fieldwire. So now let's just kind of look at like a more visual sense of this workflow, right? Hey, I can be on mobile asking a question in the field, then I get an answer on web from whomever, and then finally I can continue to work and access that information again in the field on mobile. So now let's jump into, again, just a high-level overview of specifications and submittals, kind of our main goals around it, right? One, again, similarly to RFIs, right? We want those collaborative workflows, right? Whomever you may be working with internally or externally, you're able to collaborate with and get the information to build those submittals. Next, we want to give you that automated tracking again, internally, externally. You're able to track the completion of those and make sure that you get them completed on time. And then lastly, seamless setup. And this is an idea that, let's just jump to the next slide to actually explore a little bit, because it's one of my favorite parts of our spec to submittal workflow. And the idea here is like, hey, at project startup, we can set up our clients to be able to upload your specifications to access them, but then not only just access them, but extract your submittals from those specifications. Once you've extracted those submittals, then you can just import that extraction directly into your submittal module, quickly and effectively creating every single draft submittal you're going to need on your job. And we're going to look at this workflow during the demo portion of the presentation. Lastly, let's chat about change orders. So there's a lot of excitement here at Fieldwire with the change order module, and that's because, hey, we just released it to the public about a month ago. And it really is one of those last missing pieces to make us one of those all-in-one products. So with that said, let's talk about the high level kind of successes we've seen with this module as of yet. One, speed of entry, right? Being able to quickly create these change orders, share them across your project team, as well as, never second guessing the math and making sure you're basically squeezing every last dollar out of your projects. Two, robust workflows. So again, whether you're collaborating internally or externally, you have a robust system that's going to allow you to actually create these and then send them out and make sure you're tracking the approval of those change orders. And then lastly, risk management. So, we understand that these days between, inflation and lead times and all that stuff, money's tight. So being able to monitor your project health and financial exposure on these projects is imperative, and our module allows you to do so. So before we jump into the demo, Dylan is going to provide us a next poll. So please just take a moment to answer that. All righty. So before we jump into the demo full wholeheartedly here, let's just talk about, you may be asking yourself the question, what's the real value of tracking RFIs, change orders, and submittals internally on a product like ours? And it really boils down to three main points. One, owning your own data. And the idea here is you may be using a GC system to do this tracking already. And when you submit these documents, or you're submitting your plans, your tests, or anything that you may be doing on a construction project, you don't actually own that data once the project ends and they archive that project. So if you ever want to access information or determine, hey, how do we do this in the past, determine kind of a constructability analysis, owning your data is imperative to be able to do those things, as well as if anything were to lead to litigation, you always have that information saved forever on Fieldwire. Next, process standardization, right? So we talk about, again, there's a lot of products out there in the market today, and if your GC is providing that to you, for your foremen and men and women in the field, they might not be able to learn the 6 different products that all these different GCs are using. So the ability to standardize the process on your own product really empowers them. One, it's an easy and effective tool to use, and it's going to empower them to actually have a tool that they want to use in the field on their day-to-day jobs. Lastly, right, there's just huge gains in efficiency that you can get, and reduction in mistakes that you'll get with our product, which at the end of the day, what are the big benefits to your bottom line, right? If it's more efficient, you're going to save money, and two, maybe be even able to take on more work. So now let's actually start talking about our PM modules, which again include RFI, submittals, and change orders. And the concept with these modules are actually very similar across all 3 of them, which is it's as if we've combined Excel, your email, a PDF editor, and your local server all into one product, with the added benefit of real-time tracking across your entire project team, the ability to collaborate on any one of those items, and then lastly, like we were talking about before, being able to connect that information back to these field modules so that everybody's getting eyes on these items in no matter what state they're in. So let's actually start having some fun and jumping into the actual product. So here's our RFI live log. Again, a living document where I can see all of my unique RFI numbers, the names of those RFIs, their live status, and again, talking about that collaboration and accountability, I can see exactly when my due dates are and who owes me that information when. So with that said, before we actually jump into a workflow, let's look at just a specific kind of closed out RFI, just to give you a little bit of a lay of the land. So we'll go to this paint color material swap. So as you can see, really clean, simple template that, again, whether you're a foreman or a senior PM, you can look at this and understand, hey, here's my question, here's my answers, all my attachments. So it's a very neat setup. I've got a details section where I can see the cost impacts of this. And another part that I love about this module is I can see the links that this RFI has back to my actual Fieldwire field modules. I'm going to look at an example of that in just a moment. With that said as well, we have the activity chain, and what the activity log really is, it's kind of like, think of it, it's like the live Facebook timeline of this RFI. So it's going to show you every step this RFI took in the process of getting answered. Now, today during this demo, we're actually going to look at an internal workflow sending to an external user. So you can see, hey, I've created this RFI, I've assigned it externally via email to, let's say, the GC in this case. Then the GC submitted their answer back and I inputted it in for them from that email. Then you can even see things like rejected answers and then the new submission afterwards. Now, the importance of that workflow, again, is that you've got the whole historic on this RFI if you ever need to go back during an OAC meeting or something to that effect to talk to your GC about it. So before we actually jump into the workflow also, I just want to highlight one last thing, that with this live log, right, you're getting all this great information kind of live within Fieldwire, but if you ever need to export it or give it to your client as a deliverable, and everything in Fieldwire is exportable, you're able to export this log specifically as an Excel document or a PDF report. And here, when you go to your OAC meeting, hey, it's going to have y'all's logo in the top right corner. All those RFIs that we were just looking at, basically just taking a snapshot of what we were just looking at. Tremendous. So let's jump into workflow, actually creating an RFI. And there's a couple different options for creating an RFI. One, I can go and just create an RFI from this homepage. So hey, hit on new RFI and start filling out my template. Second option, however, is hey, I can also create an RFI directly linked to the plans if I want to. I can start one that's a draft directly linked to the plans as well. Or thirdly, there's a great task to RFI workflow, which is the one that we're actually going to highlight today. So let's actually go ahead and highlight that workflow. And I always like highlighting this workflow when we first show the product to clients for a couple main reasons. First being that when I was a superintendent in the field, I remember, hey, you know, I got my field engineers out there, I've got my foreman, I've got other people that are all kind of barraging me with questions via email and text. So the ability to organize that communication with the task module is highly valuable. And then I have the ability to then basically upgrade that into an RFI. With that said, though, in the kind of old way of doing things, right, I'm getting all these text messages and emails, I'm pulling them into Word to create my RFI template, I'm saving that on my local server. Then, hey, maybe I'm updating my Excel RFI log. So I'm doing all these steps in multiple different kind of disjointed products. And if I miss any one of those steps, my entire job team might be misinformed. So let's look at the workflow. Let's imagine I'm a foreman in the field. I work for a fire suppression subcontractor installing sprinklers in this new school that we're building. So with that said, I send a new revision of the architecturals out to the field as the project manager. Now, Jimmy, the foreman's in the field, and he goes ahead, being the astute Fieldwire user, he knows that, hey, I can run a comparison of those two plans, see what's changed. And when he runs the actual physical comparison, Jimmy may recognize, oh, we're adding 2 new special ed rooms to this library. Okay, great, no problem. But he knows that our shop drawing for the sprinkler system doesn't include sprinkler heads in that room, and he knows that we need to actually add those in to make sure that this complies with New York City building code, let's say. So in this case, hey, Jimmy directly from his iPad can mark up this plan, add all the context for myself back in the office to see later on. And then instead of, again, emailing me or texting me as the project manager, Jimmy can go ahead and create a task to communicate this issue. So let's just go ahead. Sprinkler addition library. So he can title that task, go ahead, status it under RFIs and questions, put it under fire suppression. And now what Jimmy would be able to do is, hey, he did all those markups in that plan comparison. He can attach that directly to this task for me to be able to see exactly like he may be doing in an email, maybe taking a picture of a plan. Now Jimmy can go ahead and message me directly back in the office as the project manager. So, hey, @John Schmandy Cook, per New York City building code, all rooms in a school need to have sprinkler heads. We should add sprinklers to the 2 additional special ed rooms in the library and post that out. So myself back in the office, for those of you that can see my camera, I get a notification directly on my mobile device as well as on my web version on Fieldwire. I can open that up. I can see the question that Jimmy's asked. And from this point, I've got 2 options, right? If I've got the answer for this, maybe I've already been clued into this, I can just message him directly back. With that said, however, if I'm ready to create that RFI, instead of copying all that information over, I can just upgrade this task essentially straight to an RFI. And what Fieldwire is going to allow you to do is, hey, it's going to tell you, do you want to do a lot of the copying over that we would have done anyways to that original email or text message? And then in an instant, from just one click, I'm directly in my draft RFI with all that contextual information that Jimmy provided in his task. So now to save us the horror of watching me actually type all this out, I can retype Jimmy's question for him, and I can go ahead and add in a suggestion. And now I'm going to be ready to actually send this out to the client, add in cost and back if I wanted to. Now, with that said, just keep in mind that once I've filled out all this information, there's 2 kind of ways to send this out to your GCs. And we're going to look at one of the workflows for the moment. And let's look at the email out. So let's imagine, hey, I'm working with a GC that, again, we just emailed these RFIs directly to them. I can post in their email right here and shoot it directly to them from this view. Add in my due date, add in watchers if I need to as well. And then obviously add in that due date to make sure that I'm able to get that live tracking. So once I shoot this off to Brian Green, on the GC side, notice here, hey, I'm currently tracking this RFI on our change order, or pardon me, our RFI log without having to actually update anything manually. So our our general contractor gets an email with all the context that we just showed earlier, and he could just simply reply to this, and now I can just get that reply and input it back into that RFI. So Brian Green goes ahead, he types up his email, hey, approved, yeah, let's make a change order and a submittal for this as well, and he shoots that back over to you. You'll receive that email, you can access all that information, and then simply, we see clients do 2 different things. Hey, they might download this email as a PDF and input it, or they just go ahead and simply, hey, copy this over, jump into your RFI tab, and I can simply just answer on behalf of Brian, add that in, add any attachments if necessary, and close this loop out. Keep in mind at this point, you can always reject this answer, you can email it out, you can PDF it, whatever you may need to do. In this case, let's just look at, hey, let's accept this, close it out. I can decide who I want to then distribute it to internally to make sure everybody's getting on it. Hey, John Smith needs to see this, perfect, and then accept and close. That's exactly how we close out an RFI loop really quickly and succinctly in one product. Now, some of you may be asking yourselves, what about Jimmy's original question? Well, this is what I love about the linking of these RFIs back to our field modules. Jimmy jumps back into this task. He's going to see that answer RFI on web or mobile and be able to access that answer directly from his mobile device. Terrific. So that was the entire RFI workflow. Let's take another break here and do another poll. Tremendous. All right, let's jump right into submittals. So the idea with submittals, very similar to RFI, right? Hey, we're looking at this live submittal log. You can always generate a report of it, but hey, I can see every spec section, every name of my submittals, that live status, again, for the accountability, my submit by and approved by dates, as well as the current assignee involved with that submittal. Now, when I did submittals back in the day, I remember kind of three main pain points, and our clients tend to see these three main pain points as well, that around, and I'll just name them out right now. One, figuring out what submittals you actually owe the GC. So that's the first one. So, hey, how do we figure out what we owe the GC? Two, being able to assign out those submittals internally or externally to then get that information and physically build your submittal to then send to the GC. And then lastly, being able to quickly build the submittal and effectively track when you send it off to the GC. So kind of three main steps here, and we're going to solve all of those in this workflow right now. With that said, the submittal workflow to actually discover, hey, what do we actually owe the client, starts within our specifications tab. So within specs, you could do a couple cool things, right? Hey, you're going to upload your specs into Fieldwire. Fieldwire is going to do very similar to what we already do with plans, which we're going to break them out into individual spec sections automatically and name them for you. So it's basically reducing that 1,000-page document to something that's a little more palatable or digestible, call it. Next, you can also mark these specifications up and collaborate on these exactly the same way you can in plans, which again, you get that collaboration in real time as well. So let's get to the actual extraction part where, imagine I'm a HVAC subcontractor. I can actually select what spec sections I'm actually in charge of on this project and go ahead and quickly extract all of these items from those specifications in a click of a button. Now, what Fieldwire is going to do is it's going to read your specs or those specific spec sections and create basically a submittal for every instance where it sees a submittal required, product data required, O&M manual required. Now, what that final document actually looks like after a little bit of editing is, in an instant, Fieldwire's created your entire submittal log, where you have every spec section, the name, the shop, the type, and the description for you to be able to now import it back into the project. So we've answered the question around, hey, how do I actually extract that information from my specification? So I know what submittals I owe. Next, now, I want to import that information back into Fieldwire to quickly create all of these drafts. So if I come into my import function right here, I'm going to actually do an example with a submittal extraction that only included 4 submittals. So you're going to see 4 new drafts be created here. So I drop that in, and then boom, we can see all of my drafts have been created. And now I'm ready to start assigning these out. So you got a couple different options for assigning these submittals out. And let's jump back into, we're going to keep running with that same example from earlier. So we're looking at a kind of the sprinkler addition. So now we want to update the shop drawing. With that said, I can assign these out internally. Or in this case, let's say you get an email from a third party that's going to, essentially give you the shop drawing. You can just add that right in here. So you always have the option to just add in your submissions from emails that you receive from vendors that you already have internally or from any type of designer. Or in this case, what we see as a very valuable workflow for our clients is actually including key third parties that you work with. So if you have other subcontractors you work with, or you work with, you work with third-party designers like we were just talking about that make your designs, or fabricators that you work with, include them on your Fieldwire because you get real-time tracking through this request out feature. So let's say in this case, I want to request this from my designer that's named Kevin Galvin. So as the PM, I'm going to request this from Kevin Galvin. I can add my due date and all that good stuff. Kevin is going to find himself on the same exact landing page I just was, right? He uploads a submission and sends it right back to me. Now, jumping into after Kevin actually provides me that submission, I'm going to reach the portion where now I can actually review Kevin's submission directly within Fieldwire. And the beauty of this is, I remember, when you're downloading product PDFs off your email and then you open them up in something like Bluebeam and then you do your markups, it's just a lot of added steps. In this case, because Kevin sent it to me directly within Fieldwire, I can quickly go into review within Fieldwire, and start doing my markups directly within the product, saving me just time and effort. So here, I can annotate this, I can add notes. I can highlight, I can draw, I can take, hey, drop a little clouded revision if I'd like to, and then go ahead and even measure directly on here. Once I'm done and this is ready for my approval, I can even stamp this with a unique stamp or with just one of our just kind of baseline stamps that we provide y'all, and we're ready to save this and send it out to the client. So now again, keep in mind this step not necessarily necessary. We could have just gone straight from the submission, but we do see our clients see a lot of benefit in this step. Now, to send this out to the GC, again, probably not on your system. If they want to be, absolutely add them in. You could send them directly within Fieldwire. With that said, however, in this case, I can again email this out exactly the same way I did with my RFI. Or what's even better than that is, let's say they're using another product, another construction management product, pardon me. I can actually just simply download this to PDF and input it into that product directly. Now, the beauty of this document is, one, they're going to see all the context on the reviews that have happened to this document so far. So the original submission, your review of that submission, and then their approval that you'll be adding in later. And if you're worried, hey, well, how do they actually access that PDF? Fieldwire user or not, they're going to be able to access that shop drawing by simply clicking on that hyperlink and accessing the information right here. Once, hey, again, get that email back from Brian Green, I checked their system for that information, I can simply go ahead and answer on his behalf. Go ahead, hey, I can add in and upload the document that they may have sent, as well as add in their custom response based on here, add any notes, see notes in doc, and add that as the GC response. Again, and then now we get the tracking through the activity log and all those required steps. At any given time, you can also create a revision of these if you need to. So, hey, we're gonna revise something, no problem. You have that workflow built into the product. In this case, I'll close this out. I select my distribution list, and we've closed the loop on this submittal workflow. So again, we'll take a quick break here and do another poll. Tremendous. Appreciate everybody taking the time to answer that poll. So now to cap us off, let's talk about change orders. Now, the idea around change orders is really falls into, we wanted to solve three main pain points for our clients. One, we wanted to provide y'all with a system that's going to allow you to collaborate with your clients or internally on these change orders to make sure that, one, hey, you can have your whole team checking in on these. One, they know that change orders are being created without having to go into an exterior log that they don't have access to. And three, but based on that collaboration, ensuring that you're not making mistakes to be able to squeeze every last dollar out of your projects. Two, we want you to be able to track where every dollar value is on your project vis-a-vis change orders. And that's why the aesthetic of this module is a little bit different, where, hey, you've got the live change order log where I can see all the change order names, their live status, their due dates, and the dollar amount, that the dollar value. But I can also see them in this easy to read kind of summary banner where I can see exactly where all my monies are sitting in and know exactly, hey, if we're running short on cash or whatever may be going on, or we don't know why these are delayed, I can start pushing drafts or pushing my pending approvals and making sure that we keep healthy cash flows on our projects. Lastly, we wanted to give you an easy and quick way to actually develop these change orders. I remember the days of, like, somebody tells you you're gonna have to create like a $500 change order, and you know that your process is just, it's a little bit of a tedious process. It might just cost you $200 in managerial labor just to create it. There's no value there, right? You don't want to spend $200 to make 500. In this case, when it's just the production of the paperwork, call it administrative cost. So coming back to that library example that we were talking about, where, hey, we're going to add those additional sprinklers. Now I can actually build the change order for that specific document. As you can see, another simple and easy to digest kind of, layout here, where I can be adding in my internal costs to this items. I can add in any subcontractor costs I may need to. I can also add cost markups like for profit and taxes or whatever it may be. And then finally add final markups vis-a-vis like, hey, maybe bond adjustments or insurance adjustments. So with that all said, hey, you got all the kind of nickels and dimes of the change order. And then next, you also have the ability to quickly attach backup documentation, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. On the right-hand side, really simple, hey, you can select any type of, hey, what's the reasoning for this change order to provide that back to the GC, hey, design change, owner change, whatever it may be. You can also add in reference numbers. So, hey, if the GC is sending you like a PCO number, you can attach it directly in here so that they know what this refers to exactly. Then lastly, I can identify schedule impact, as well as descriptions to these. So with that all said, let's actually just look at how quick and easy this is actually to fill out. So hey, let's say I'm filling out my material, I'm reviewing this, and I forgot to add in pipe hangers. I can quickly come into the document. Hey, let me add in pipe hangers here. Go ahead and say, hey, we're gonna need 20 of them on the job. Go ahead at eaches, and then say, let's say I go look at my quote, and I know that these are $23.50 each. Perfect. Add in that cost, and I don't need to worry about second guessing the math. My material section's been updated, as well as the entire change order price has been updated instantaneously. So I keep filling out my labor, my equipment, whatever I may be using on this. Again, I can add in that subcontractor for that exterior designer that did the revision to his original sprinkler layout design. And then lastly, I can add my cost markups. One thing to keep in mind with cost markups, and another thing that I find this makes just a really powerful tool, is if you're adding things like material tax or like profit margins that are only specific to certain sections, no worries, you can add those things in not only to the entire change order, but to specific sections as well. So in this case, hey, taxes, I'm going to apply that to the material, 6.5%. Perfect, we're good to go. Add in my final adjustments. And then lastly, when it comes to backup documentation, one thing I always like to highlight here is we're working with one cohesive product here. And now the big benefit to that is that not only is, hey, I've done the RFI, I've done the submittal workflow, and now I'm reaching the change orders. I'm working in one product where I can attach all that information back into it quickly and effectively, like our plan comparison, like that original RFI that we sent, the quote from my subcontractor that I could have received through Fieldwire, and the modifications to the submittal itself. When you're ready to send this out, you can do it very similar to what we've done in the other modules, or hey, you can just download this to PDF, provide it to your GC, and you get another clean, simple format where, hey, I've got all my backup information. I've got sections where I can sign these documents, where I can sign it, send it over to them, wait for their signature, as well as the full cost breakdown below. So that was, again, just a sneak peek into change orders. Please, we implore you to reach out if you have some more interest in seeing that module specifically. Let's do one last poll before we jump into our Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for taking the time to answer all of those polls, and thank you, John, for taking us through all those different modules. We're gonna take the last couple minutes here to answer some Q&A questions from the audience. So I'll just kick it off with one for you here, John. The
Sure.
first one is, do architects and engineers, etc., have to be added as a user to my project to send a submittal to them? Does it alert them via email or via the Fieldwire app?
So just double check I understand the question. We implore you, hey, you should add them in, but we were looking at all the external workflows today. So you can absolutely just have them sent out via an export like a PDF. We can be sending them also via those email out features as well that we talked about when hey, I want to sign this out, email it directly to them and get those answers back via email as well.
Perfect. Next, another question here is this information slash presentation downloadable? Yes, we'll be sending out a follow-up email with a copy of the recording. And we'll also, there's another question here, if this is the this video or a video of extracting submittals out of the specs will be available on YouTube. We'll be posting this this webinar as well with all of our other webinars on our YouTube channel. So you can always reference those in the future. Okay, another question for you here, John. Is there a way to automate the RFI process so I don't have to manually copy responses from emails and then put them into Fieldwire?
So absolutely. One of those ways is actually physically adding those people into your project. So let's say, again, let's say you're working with a designer directly without the GC, or you're taking on a job where you're working as a GC. You can add those designers into your project, into their individual company, and then you can just send them those RFIs directly. So now they have two options for answering. They can answer within Fieldwire, or one workflow that we love to show clients is they can even just answer to your email directly. So this is again for Fieldwire users that you send these RFIs to. They can answer the RFI directly to that email, and then you'll see that action within the activity log right here. So hey, I created it, sent it out, and now Kevin's answered it, and I can just quickly mark that information as the answer, just kind of again expediting the process of copy and pasting that email over.
Perfect. Another question for you here. We act as an owner's rep. So for these, for the change orders, they would be owner requested change orders. Can it be set up to send the request to the contractor and allow them to add the details on the items and quantities and costs?
Absolutely, yeah. So you could absolutely build a change order where, let's say, again, let's imagine I'm more the owner's rep or kind of a CM role here. I can create a new one. Actually, I'll just go ahead and do one of my existing ones. I come here and start filling out line items and then go ahead and request this cost out from any user within my Fieldwire.
Perfect. Another straightforward question here. Can you change the Fieldwire stamp on downloaded templates so that it is my company's stamp instead? I think John mentioned that maybe once, but yes, you definitely can. All those documents and PDFs that John was showing, those can be changed to be whatever your company logo. So definitely make it customizable to your company. Let's see. Let's go. Is there a way to ensure that an RFI gets reviewed by a PM, for example, before going out to a GC?
Absolutely. So let's talk about, there's kind of a couple different levels within the Fieldwire access. So let's say, Jimmy was our foreman in this case. I can make him in the PM access column, I can make him a contributor only. So again, maybe your field engineers or your foreman, they're just contributors. So they create the document. And then as a manager, they have to send it to their manager before being able to send that over to the GC. So you'll always be able to get eyes on that document before you send it out, essentially.
Cool. I think we have time for one last one before we wrap things up here. So last question for you, John. I often have to submit all RFIs, submittals, and change orders on the GC portals. Will this export to those?
So Dylan, if I understand the question correctly, you mean just being able to export that data into it?
Yes, I think what we showed already, but just to reiterate that point.
For sure. So again, any single one of these modules plans to every single thing in Fieldwire is easily exportable. And in this case, let's say, let me just go to a pending one here. I can easily go ahead and download this to PDF or email it out and provide it within their system.
Perfect. I think we're right at time here, so we'll wrap it up with that. Again, the last couple things, if we didn't get to your question, we'll have one of our experts reach out to you directly to answer those. You'll also be getting a follow-up email with a copy of the slide deck and recording. And then last but not least, if you could just take a moment to fill out our survey that pops up right when you exit the webinar, we really appreciate it. It really helps us kind of put together our roadmap and understand what we're doing well and what we can improve in the future. So thanks everyone again for joining. Hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you next time.